Hi everyone, Materim here again with another battle report, and this is the second of our army swap night. After having kicked my teeth in, Michael takes my designed Ogre Kingdoms army versus Skip, who is playing the dwarf army list that Michael put together. We're doing 2,500 points in battle line scenario. So, those of you that were paying attention to the first battle report will note that this is the same board that we just used. The ogres chose their side this time and picked the exact same side. So, the dwarves are deployed where I had been before, and I'm not going to go over the ogre deployment in detail, just kind of show you where everything is, but I will go over in detail the dwarf side. So, starting on the left, we have Saber Tusk, Noblar Scrap Launcher, ogres with the Slaughtermaster in them. On the hill, we've got the Iron Blaster with the Lead Belchers in front of them. Then we've got the Iron Guts with the General, Tyrant, and BSB in there. Then there's another Saber Tusk and three more Yetis. There's another Saber Tusk way on the far end as well, but I forgot to get a picture of him. And here you see are the three man-eaters scouted just 12 inches from the gyrocopter on the corner of the dwarfs area there. And I'm pretty sure I get the whole dwarf deployment in this one shot. We've got a gyrocopter, we've got 10 unit of, 15 Thunderers with standard and musician. We have a dwarf cannon. This one has the Rune of Forging and the Rune of Burning. Then there's a unit of 30 Longbeards with full command and the Rune of Stoicism. With them is a Runesmith with the Master Rune of Balance and a shield. Next to that is a unit of 40 Hammerers with full command and the Master Rune of Valia. With them is a Runesmith with 2 runes of Spell Breaking and a Great Weapon. A Thane, who is his BSB with a Great Weapon and the Master Rune of Grungy, and his Dwarf Lord on Shield Bearers with 2 runes of Might, the Armor of Borak Beetlebrow, and a Rune of Speed. And then we've got a final Gyro Bomber on the far side near the building. And that's pretty much everything he's got. So the Dwarves get the first turn, and they start just kind of moving the Gyro Bomber into position. I think, just kind of looking at the army, I don't think the dwarves have quite enough units to handle things, so the use of the gyro bomber and the gyrocopter, I think, are going to come in just absolutely crucial if he's going to have any chance of kind of picking his battles against the ogre force that's coming on. And then this gyrocopter just turns and gets close enough where he can spray the 3 man-eaters. I personally didn't think this was a great move. I think he should have flown over the man-eaters and dropped the bomb on them, and then harassed them if they go any further into his lines. But at least this way he has a speed bump that they have to go over before they can get into the Thunderers or his cannon over there. So I guess that's why he did that. And so with all of the shooting the dwarves do, they don't really have a good time of it, and they only manage to kill a single Iron Gut out of that main unit. And I think the dwarves, with what they've got here, they're going to need to do so much better than that to thin down these ogres before they hit them. Because Michael has a lot of faith in the strength of the hammer horde, but I know my ogres, and they're going to put a hurting on him if they can get there at anything close to full strength. So we go to the first ogre turn, and the man-eaters start by charging the gyrocopter there. It turns and flees and escapes. The man-eaters stumble forward 2 inches, I think. They didn't go up very much. And over here, the Yetis try for a relatively long charge at the gyro bomber, and he chooses to flee with the gyro bomber as well. Now, this one, I don't know that I would have done this. He was up on the fence, could have defended, might have held out, but more importantly now, his 2 pieces of chaff have just been pushed to the back. Yeah, they might rally next turn, but they're going to be out of position, and I think it might be a sign that the ogres have the dwarves on their heels already, and it's only top of turn one. I think he's going to need to be more aggressive with that chaff and use it in conjunction with these large, fairly formidable combat units that the dwarves have to really punish the ogres for sort of crossing that fence line. And if he can do that, I think he's got a strong chance of winning. But he's going to have to be very careful at how he chooses to flee, and how he redirects some of these other potentially threatening units that just don't quite pack the same punch that the Iron Gut unit or the even the normal Ogre unit pack. And the rest of the Ogre line, excepting the Iron Blaster, just surges forward like crazy. I think the Ogre player knows that he needs to put some major pressure on the Dwarf units, and it's going to require some concentrated attacks, because I don't think any one of these units is going to do great against particularly that big hammer brick. But if he can bring a good amount of his army to bear at one time, he can present a very credible threat. So magic was pretty immaterial. In the shooting phase, the Iron Blaster hits dead on this cannon and inflicts only 2 wounds, so the cannon's still hanging out. Actually, I'm sorry, that 2 wounds was inflicted by the Lead Belchers, because when he tries to fire the Iron Blaster, he misfires and spins around pointing off in this direction. So sorry about that. The Lead Belchers did the damage to the cannon. So we go to Dwarf turn 2, and it starts off with the Gyrocopter failing to rally and continuing to flee from the Man-Eaters, which is just bad. The longer these chaff units stay out of the combat, the worse it's going to end up being for the Dwarfs. The Gyro Bomber, however, does manage to rally, but ends up taking a wound from the Haunted Mansion that tower represents. So, really, at this point, the dwarves can't seem to win for losing. So during dwarf shooting, he tries to bounce a cannonball essentially through the Lead Belchers and into the Iron Blaster. Ends up just landing one on the head of the Lead Belcher, but he does end up doing 3 wounds and killing it. So, definitely gonna help, although I may have targeted the close combat forces considering how close they are. And over here the other cannon does a single wound to one ogre, or one Iron Gut in this unit, so just bad dice luck all things considered. He was trying to bounce it through that unit and into the Yetis, and again just hits short, hits the one unit and inflicts a single wound. And then his Thunderers attempt to pick up the slack and shoot at this Ogre unit, and even with the cover of the fence ends up inflicting 2 wounds on the Ogre unit. So we go into Ogre turn 2, and it starts off with the Ogre unit here charging the Thunderers, and they stand and shoot, killing one Ogre and putting a couple of wounds on the next one. And then it was followed up by the fact that the ogres then failed their charge, so they end up right where you see them there. So definitely some good fortune for the dwarves. Hopefully they'll be able to capitalize on it and reduce that ogre unit a little bit more. However, that fortune is short-lived as the Man-Eaters come slamming into the side of those Thunderers, and yeah, that's just going to be messy. That's a unit just designed to kill stuff like the Thunderers. And over here we have a kitty deciding to go helicopter hunting and succeeds a charge into the Gyro Bomber. He chose to stand because if he fled, he'd go off the table. And he's got a pretty decent shot of killing the Saber Tusk here. And so we have another general move up of the Ogre line with the remaining moves. Not quite as aggressive as it was the first turn. I'm not entirely sure why he's slowing down. I know he doesn't want to run the Lead Belchers through that swamp or that Cimmerian quicksand because it'd just flat out kill a couple of them. But I don't know. I think maybe he's holding back to kind of maybe thin down the hammerers before he comes in and get everything in position, because I think he realizes that that hammerer unit is not going to go down to just a single unit, even of the iron guts. So he's going to need to get ready with some support there as well. And I'm sorry if I don't remember the details of all the magic phases, but they were fairly uneventful throughout this whole game until the close to the end. But this game took place several days ago, and so we go into shooting, and the lead belchers shoot into the hammers, and pretty much whiff. They kill. I think that's 3 models dead there, 2 or 3 models dead. But with the Master Rune of Grungy in that, he's getting a 5-up ward save against any shooting, so it's going to make it a little harder to do anything to that unit with shooting. He's just going to need to do what he can and then get in there and get messy in close combat. And the Ogre Cannon misfired again and just couldn't fire for a turn. But this is the best thing that happened in the shooting phase. The Haunted Mansion goes off again. Does not inflict any wounds on the Saber Tusk, but ends up inflicting 2 more wounds on the gyrocopter, or the gyro bomber, and kills it. So the cat didn't do anything. The gyro bomber here was killed by the angry ghosts of the Warriors of Chaos, who just lost bad on this on this same battlefield. So that was pretty fun. So in close combat, the Man-Eaters ate almost all of the the Thunderers in combat. The 2 remaining were ran down, and then the Man-Eaters slammed into that first cannon in the side there. So we go into Dwarf turn 3, and at this point the Dwarf player knows that he needs to get a little bit more proactive and attempts to charge the Ogres and fails his charge. So he went from trying to be proactive to basically setting up an auto charge for the Ogres there. So that was totally not what he wanted to do, and has put a definite crimp in his plan to be able to present a united, strong front to these Ogres. And here you see the gyrocopter rallies, and he actually backs up with his Longbeards. The reason he did this is so now the Ogres will be in the front, or the Man-Eaters will be in the front of the Longbeard unit instead of coming into their side once they kill this cannon. So I thought that was pretty clever. So during shooting, cannon goes off, lands a hit on the Noblar scrap launcher, which inflicts 2 wounds. Again, I think he was trying to bounce it through the Ogres here and overshot it, so it landed on the head of the scrap launcher, because I can't imagine that was his primary target, considering how close those Ogres are. And in close combat, it's no great surprise to anybody that 3 Dwarf cannon crew cannot stand up against 3 Man-Eaters. I think they died in impact hits, in honesty. And he's ready basically to go into anything on that side, so it's not looking good for the Dwarves. Their flanks are being severely threatened. Except we remember at the last moment that this cannon has a Rune of Immolation on it. So it blows up, and I think I actually stated that wrong. It has a Rune of Immolation, not a Rune of Burning on it. But anyway, it blows up and kills one of the 2 Man-Eaters, or one of the 3 Man-Eaters. So still lost a cannon, but wasn't terrible. And so we go into Ogre turn 3, and all hell gets unleashed on this hammer unit. The Yetis end up coming in on that front corner. They were in the front, so they managed to tick in at the corner there. The Iron Guts come in, not only slam in hard, but do so with an Ogre charge. So they got a bunch of impact hits. The Lead Belchers end up slamming in hard as well. And then the 2 Man-Eaters decide to skip over the Longbeards and end up slamming into this cannon, so that when he fights that fight first, he'll be able to overrun into the side of the hammers. And that's just a lot of Ogre flesh for those Dwarves to deal with. And it's going to be a rough go. And after combat, you can see exactly how rough a go. The cannon gets iced by the man-eaters. They come slamming in. Everything's going just crazy for the ogres. Impact hits were just ridiculous. I think impact hits killed like 10 by themselves. Uh, and the Ogre Tyrant declares a challenge. Dwarf Lord steps up. Because of the Rune of Speed, Dwarf Lord goes one initiative tick faster than good old Tok'ran and ices him in a single set of blows. So he died. But even with him dying with something like 3 overkill from the multi wound, um, it really just didn't matter. The number of ogres doing their attacks and the Yeti and the lead belchers and the man eaters, it just there was nothing the dwarves could really do. At least on this side where the man eaters are, there's a battle standard bearer kind of holding up that line. There's the dwarf lord in the middle kind of holding up things, and they're hammerers, so they're still stubborn, so they're not going anywhere. But it's rough, and you can see here the Yetis have reformed so that they're conga lining, so that they're going to get 3 extra attacks next turn. The BSB has stepped up, so he can just start trashing things. And I think at this point, this unit, unless his characters just do something ridiculously good, he just doesn't have enough bodies to deal with the press of ogres. And I think he needs to do something with those long beards very, very quickly, or this whole side, and basically his whole force at that point, is just going to collapse. And this isn't even counting the other unit of ogres that are just sitting right on that, or rather, slowly coming in on that flank there. And this kind of gets back to what I was talking about. I don't know that the dwarf list has enough units. He had one tough nut to crack, and the ogres have cracked it. And it'll be interesting to see sort of where things go from here and how they can react. Oh, and I did forget to show that the Saber Tusk here charged the gyrocopter hanging out in the back, and the gyrocopter obviously stayed. And so during that combat, I think the gyrocopter did a wound to the Saber Tusk. Saber Tusk didn't do anything back, so it was a push charge to wound. So during Dwarf turn 4, the Ironbeards failed to charge against the ogres off to the side, and there was really nothing else to do but go into combat. First combat ended up having the gyrocopter kill the Saber Tusk, but the bigger combat was just bloody. The Dwarf Lord just killed a bunch of dudes. Killed an Iron Gut and 2 other Lead Belchers. But at this point, there's nothing but characters left. The ogres killed every other iron or every other hammerer there. And the way that things collapsed, the Yetis actually got pushed out of combat. So with their victory, the dwarves didn't break. Big surprise. The Iron Guts reformed to 4, like 2 by 2, to give the Yetis another charge in to the flank of the unit next turn. So it's messy. At this point, the dwarf characters are all that are holding it together, and they're going to have to pull just some crazy magic out of their beards to make this work in any way, shape, or form. And this just goes to show the gyrocopter having killed the cat and reformed, facing the ogres here. So we go to Ogre turn 4, and the ogres slam right into the front of the the Longbeards. The Longbeards can probably hold this off for a while. I mean, they're hand weapon and shield, but they're strength 4. The impact hits may do a little hurt, but there's a lot of bodies to go through for the ogres. So I'm not entirely sure which way I'm expecting this battle to go. And here you see those Yetis do come rushing in. I think they make contact with the runesmith that's in that corner, but it's just bloody, and there's really just not enough dwarves to deal with anything right now. What the ogres just need to do is kill off the weaker characters and hope that does enough damage to break that dwarf lord, because he's going to be hard to break otherwise. He's very well built. And after combat here, there's some wounds exchanged on both sides. Sorry for the blurry picture, but the dwarves managed to hold. I think the spell that you see there is this is when the ogre magic starts going off, and I think he had. Oh yeah, this is when he got bubble troll guts off. So everything in this fight has troll guts on it right now. So 4-up regen on every ogre in the thing really makes the rest of this kind of a foregone conclusion. So yeah, the everybody else just kills the last of these characters. The Dwarf Lord breaks, gets run down, and that's the Iron Guts getting ready to eat him. So dwarf turn, really nothing much going on. I think the gyrocopter turns over here to try and spray the one remaining lead belcher and the iron guts, but with regeneration up, he's just not doing anything that's worthwhile. And again here, sorry for the blurry picture, but you can see this combat just trades a few blows, but nobody's going anywhere. It's going to be a drag out. So Ogre turn 5 charges the lead belcher into the gyrocopter, which I think is a mistake. He could have just stood there and shot him. But more importantly, brings those iron guts into the flank of the Longbeards, and that's pretty much just going to be enough to push the fight fully in the favor of the ogres. And here you see the Noblar Scrap Launcher continue to move up. It misfired a turn or two ago and now has random movement because of it, so it's just been kind of coming closer and closer to the fight, just because he's got to move it somewhere. So we go into combat. The gyrocopter kills the lead belcher and reforms to face the saber tusk at the bottom here. The ogres just put a murdering on Longbeards and kill another 5 or 6 of them. But they're not breaking, so he's rolling really well on break checks. And the only reason the man-eaters aren't in is because there's no room for them. The ogres are too wide to let them clip the front, and they're not in position to come in on the flank. So we go into dwarf turn 6, and in a mad scramble for points, the gyro bomber charges into, or the gyrocopter charges into the saber tusk, who doesn't flee because he'd go off the board. So he'll probably still die, but figured it was better to die in combat than die from running off the board. And so we go into combat, and of course the gyrocopter ices the saber tusk and reforms just to watch the slow demise of his friends, I think. And so after the combat in the center, the ogres, I think they managed to kill the runesmith that was in this unit, but they do not kill or break the unit. So it manages to hold tough. They inflicted some good wounds. It was, you can see 3 full ogres die there in the back. So those dwarves did not go down easy. They were throwing punches with the best of them. However, during bottom of 6, the ogres just put the rest of the damage they needed to in, and there were only 3 dwarves there left, and they just got crushed. So at this point, the only thing at bottom of 6 that the dwarves have on the table is that single gyrocopter that has 2 wounds on him. So this one's pretty much pretty much ready for the record books. And so, to no one's real surprise, the Ogre Kingdoms have picked up their 2nd win for the night. I've said a lot in the last battle report about this ogre list, so I don't think there's really anything else that I need to say much about them. It's a very strong list. It's definitely got the tools to get the job done. As far as the dwarf list goes, though, I think the biggest problem, and this is a problem that has always plagued Michael, he likes big, expensive characters, and he likes hordes. So when he combines those two things together, it means he spends an awful lot of his points on a very small number of units. And while you can make up to a certain degree with just the power of the unit, I don't think that the hammerers have the survivability to do that. Yeah, they can put out some damage, but they're always strikes last. Even in horde formation, if something like a concentrated unit or a couple units, like in this case, hit them and they're going to attack faster, there's not enough hammerers left to really get the job done once they need it. I think if he had gone with some smaller units, maybe even just like 5-man units of rangers for chaff and redirectors, um, maybe a couple more war machines, a flame cannon would have done him a lot of good trying to thin down those ogres. Something like that. I think if he had gone. He has a very strong love for cannons, almost to the point where he doesn't ever take any other war machines. And I think if he went with organ gun or flame cannon, he'd be in a better shape to thin down those infantry blocks first. Um, and this is just the kind of thing that why I don't like hammerers. I tried them in my lists. I've seen Michael run them, and I just don't think they're worth it. Yeah, they can put out a crazy amount of damage, but they're just not survivable. And I think the dwarves really need, when they win, they really need to win on a grind. And I don't think the hammers can grind. They're as close as the dwarves get to a glass cannon. So, all in all, though, it was a fun game to watch. I know the guys had a good time. It's always good to see my White Tooth clan come in and stomp a mud hole in somebody. So that was a lot of fun. So it looks like we are. I know I said at the last part of the last battle report that we're going to do some more of these practices, but I think the guys are ready to get back into the narrative. So next week we're going to meet. We're going to have a couple of narrative games. So I'll get some narrative battle reports back up as soon as we can. I know this is definitely battle report 61 and 62 are going to be narrative battle reports. So we'll get back to what we do best. And between now and then, feel free to keep tuning in on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for our little live show we've been doing, Narrations and Lamentations with Matiram and the boys. It's kind of just the three of us sitting around and talking about whatever there is to talk about for the day as it relates to Warhammer and narrative campaign play and casual gaming, and we usually answer viewer mail and stuff like that. So we've been having a lot of fun doing it, so definitely tune in. But that's going to do it for this battle report. Please, if you have any comments, leave them below. Like and subscribe the channel to see more of this kind of lovely content. And we will catch you on the next time. Thanks a lot.